itself. So we've got a cost quote from Finger Lakes Construction, who did the original building, and that's pretty much how it's going to look. Roughly 35 by 35, like it's identical to the north end of the building. So everything will match, everything will look good. I'm just hoping for your blessing, that's all. And we'll raise all the money. We already have some money set aside. We've got some very generous people in the community that have offered to help, and I didn't want to start working on grants until we got your approval. So
I can't think of a reason why the town board wouldn't give the blessing on this, but maybe.
No, absolutely, Ron, and I want to thank you for all that you, and I know you have a team, you have an army of volunteers.
Well, I don't know about an army, but it's a good group of people that want to do good things.
And you've just been a tremendous leader. I want to thank you for all that you've done, and I think this looks great.
Great.
It's a beautiful
I would echo that.
addition.
Thank you, Ron, for
Thank
your
you.
dedication, seriously.
And any questions or whatever? You know, just on a side note, 25 years ago, we started the baseball program with 30 kids this past summer, and we do other sports. We just finished up flag football, but over 200 players just in baseball alone. So
Wow.
it keeps growing. Now we're on to basketball at the rec center and Christmas kickball with Santa Claus at the field. So that's our last tent rental, I hope. So
Good.
I do have
Thank
one
you.
question.
yes.
How many autograph seekers for the cover you were on of the Webster Today a few months ago?
A couple of the kids.
Did they rhyme
Yeah.
for autograph?
You know, they don't know that I'm really not that famous.
Oh,
so.
no.
Oh, yes, you are.
Yeah, you
In
are.
their eyes, you are.
Yeah, that was really nice. That was actually a surprise when I got to the mailbox. I knew nothing about it, so I don't know where the information came from, but it was appreciated. Like I said, you know, I always say we do have a team. So there's a lot of people, and I will not say enough about Don Barone, who is the silent guy behind all this. He's the guy who put the idea in my head. He's the treasurer. He's the money guy, and he just does things because he likes to do good stuff. So
Yeah.
kept it under
You did
5
great.
minutes.
I mean, hey.
So, all right.
It's
Board
I
meetings.
was
Thank
just
you.
saying, thank you for all you do. It's a beautiful addition. It makes the area much more user-friendly, and now it expands the area that you can use in inclement weather.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
it's fantastic.
Yeah, the hope is on the south side, it'll be another thing to do, but kind of doors that come down to keep the wind out, so in inclement weather, we can use it, so. All
I
right.
just have one question for you, Ron. I think it's only fitting to recognize the architectural firm that did the pro bono work.
Yes, it's Form 2 Architecture, Jeff Ledoux.
Yeah.
We met him at the Fairport, we do booths all over, and he walked by over at the Fairport Music Festival. So what's all this all about? And then the next you know, he actually, we just did a golf tournament, and he, on top of everything, he financially gives, so
Wow.
great guy. Their firm designed the East Side YMCA. They do all kinds of stuff. It took months and months. I had to keep bugging him. It's like, look, we'll pay you, but he didn't want a penny, so.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, they're great, so. All right,
Thank you, Ron.
thank you.
Thanks, Ronnie.
Thanks.
Have a good night.
So look at, he caught us up. We're 3 minutes ahead of time. Our next agenda item is actually a follow-up to an August 8th workshop presentation. And it has to do with potential changes to the Ridge Commons Progressive Development District, a PDD. And I know tonight Ann Riley is here. And Sarah, your last name is?
Costich,
Sarah Kostich?
yes,
There's a Sarah Kostich as Kostich?
yes.
Did not know that.
Yes.
The owner's in the house of Kostich Engineering. Thanks for what you've done on our conveyance pipe for Coke Fairlight. That's great.
Yep.
So since we have a minute or two that we're ahead of time, I just want to just recap. This is a follow-up to August 8th. August 8th, at that workshop, actually Mike Montalto, close, he did the presentation that night. And at the end, really the board, it was about a 20-minute presentation, the board wanted to see the actual minutes and/or resolutions from November and December of 2019, when the Progressive Development District was set up, because there was a lot of discussion back and forth, and Charlie, you were very much involved in it, that it seemed interesting that the PDD was set up over two zoning classifications, over MH, or what is it, Josh?
MHR.
MHR, but
and
also
MC.
MC.
Correct.
And there was a lot of back and forth. I'm not gonna take 20 minutes to rehash the 20 minutes. People can go watch that video from August 8th. But it was seemed unusual that a PDD for housing would be on a commercial one, because the PDD doesn't usually change the essence of what the zoning is. But it seemed to be a moot point, because Building 7, where this developer was gonna buy off of the Fox family, and they were anxious to apply for a grant by September 15th with the state, to put, what did you call it? Workforce housing.
Workforce housing, yeah.
Now, the fact that you're back here on October 7th, I don't want to assume anything, because whenever I assume, I get smoked. But is that buyer no longer in play because you didn't come back before September 15th's grant application, or is the buyer still in play and they decided not to pursue the grant?
At this point, we understand from the buyer, I represent the Fox family.
Okay.
Ann Riley, but and I wasn't here for that meeting, so I really didn't
Neither
know.
was I.
I didn't know all the back and forth. But that particular purchaser, we almost basically lost them, because we couldn't explain what their use was here. They weren't comfortable with the use. They have expressed, they never did find another piece of property for the grant application for September 15th of this year, but they're still interested for next year.
Okay.
So that's what they're saying. We didn't get them to sign a contract yet. I'm not going to tell you they're on the hook, but that's what we need to straighten this out, because the way we're looking at it, I understand your point about the zoning issue, but the way the PDD, the final, I don't know if that's what's up there, but on the PDD map, it has a chart that shows each parcel and what the use for that parcel would be. This parcel was multifamily / elder care, which my client understood that to be, I guess we all interpret it to be multifamily, including elder care, not exclusively elder care. And that's how I think the town staff is interpreting it, that it was exclusively for senior housing. But that's not what we're getting interest in. We have this multifamily workforce housing. That's one interest. There was a previous interested party as well for multifamily. But again, they got scared away because of the zone. So what we'd like to do, what we're asking, what we'd like the board to do is either to consider or hopefully make an amendment to the PDD to clarify, any multiple family use, not just elderly. And that, I don't know what the process would be for that, if that's going to be a public hearing, if you have the ability to do that without a public hearing. But we want to get this started so that we're not stuck again with that short time frame next year.
Sure, and if I understand correctly, the buyer is still in play, but it's not such a crisis urgency, because they're not going to
They
apply
lost
for
their
this.
deadline. They couldn't make the deadline.
Right.
So now they have enough time.
Right.
Hopefully, there's enough time to deal with this issue, get this cleared up so that they can make their application.
Okay, and Ann, you said that you weren't at the meeting,
No,
and I couldn't tell because I've watched the video a couple of times, because I was not here that night either. Mike was the only one that came up to the podium. Actually, Charlie did at the end.
Yeah, Charlie.
But I just didn't know, Ann, if you were in the crowd and the camera didn't pan.
no, I wasn't there.
Have you watched a video of that meeting?
No, I have not.
Okay.
But we had all this, we went through and looked at all the documentation from 2019 as well. And at that point, there was a buyer. There was a buyer for the storage, and there was also a buyer for the senior housing on that particular parcel.
Right.
They eventually didn't pursue for
Sure.
a certain period of time. COVID hit, and then they just went away.
That's exact, and I got 3 pages of notes I took from the video. It was 20 minutes on August 8th. Mike Montaldo told that exact story, 2019, November, December, public hearing, make the PDD. Then COVID hit, storage goes down the street, senior housing. There was a question by Patty, who was running the meeting, is this for rent or own? There was not really an answer, but then Charlie came up at the end and said, I'm pretty sure they're looking to rent.
Yeah, it's
The
all
owners are
rental.
looking to rent it
Yeah.
to the workforce housing.
Yeah, there's a state funding program for the workforce housing, which is
Sure.
basically for, for people in the workforce. It's not affordable type housing.
Now, I know that our town clerk, who is phenomenal, less than 12 hours after that board workshop, sent out to the town board and to the town attorney the resolutions and the board minutes from November and December of 19. Did you get those also from us?
Yeah, yes.
Okay, so, I don't know, from a standpoint of, now that we have those documents, some of the questions that were brought up on August 8th was, does there have to be a new public hearing to amend the PDD? There was some bantering back and forth. Charlie said off the top of his head, without research, he said yes. I don't know if we really have gone and done that research, but I would agree with you, there'd probably have to be a public hearing for that.
I'm still,
Yeah, and I don't think we would object to that or dispute that. We want to do this right. So, if we need a public hearing to do that, then we're obviously going to participate in that. But we just needed guidance from you. After that meeting, it seemed
Sure.
like you guys needed to get up to speed and weren't able to give us really the direction to. what
And I'm
the
really
next
glad
steps.
that there isn't as much crisis. I don't want to drag this out till September of next year and put Charlie and you guys and the buyer in a crisis for September 15th. But this gives us enough time to take a look at, I don't quite understand, there was discussion on August 8th that there was dialogue, I love that term, in 2019, I'm assuming with Jeff Benway, our DPW Commissioner, Don Hausa, whoever else that said, oh yeah, put the PDD over both parcels, both the commercial and whatever, which didn't make sense to us. But once again, we've gone back, that dialogue seems to have been verbal, and that's one of those, I don't
Well,
know.
the
And
final-
Josh wasn't here back then, I
Well, the-
wasn't here, most of us weren't here.
Well, the
So
final PDD plan does include the entire
I understand that.
acreage.
And I wonder, because there was so much discussion on August 18th, does it make sense that if you go for amended PDD, and we do we truncate it down to just the parcel that is the residential? Because that's where Building 7 is going to be.
Right. That's kind of what we're asking for. We are asking for clarification on that parcel.
Okay.
To amend for that parcel.
I
And if that
guess.
that's what we need, we just need to understand.
Yeah.
There's gonna be a public hearing, maybe we look at it, we could talk about what is the next step for this, so that we're not caught
Yeah.
not being able to explain what they can do on that parcel.
I think now knowing the fact pattern in the September of next year, we have 4 board meetings the rest of the year, 2 in November, 2 in December. I'm sure, the next board meeting is 3 weeks from now. Queuing up a resolution to set a public hearing. Now, I don't know if, can we set it for November 21st? Probably not. Probably would have to be set for December 5th, because this is probably one of those no less than 10, no more than 20. We'd have to get it in our paper, the Webster Herald, blah, blah, blah. But in that time frame between Ann, you, and Charlie, and any other town legal staff, what are you asking for? And I think you just said the PDD amendment, you're just looking for a clarification, whatever, on the residential part.
Right, what we don't want is it to be exclusively senior. And that's the way it's being interpreted now by town staff.
Right,
Josh,
and
Josh.
actually, Ann.
And I don't-
and we've
I'm
known
not
each
saying
other.
he's wrong. I'm
Please
just
go
saying-
back and watch the tape, because there was a lot of back and forth, and it was funny, and I'm paraphrasing what Charlie said on tape that night, is that, well, it looks like the intention was for senior housing, but there's nothing overt in the writing that says it can't be senior housing and can't be something else. That's ambiguous, so we'd have
Yeah, no,
to figure
And
out.
that's fine, that's why I think we need clarification, so
and
that
that's
every,
exactly what we need, is clarification.
That everybody understands where it
It may or
is.
may not be an amendment of the PDD, but it's gonna definitely be a clarification.
So it could
be an
What was intended.
interpretation.
And I think that would be where you would make a presentation, not you, but the applicant would make a presentation, there would be a public hearing, and
Well,
So,
the other thing is that I don't know if we have to move the lot line, or I move the zoning line either. That's another thing we have to clarify.
is that
And
because
if we
you?
do, we'd have to make that part of the application.
does-
Because part of this parcel that's in the, this piece, this particular lot, is partially an MC and partially an MHR.
The zoning line goes through the parcel that
Right
this
through the parcel,
buyer
yeah.
wants to buy to put building 7
Yeah,
up
and-
for,
And
okay.
actually, all around this property is multifamily
Yeah.
housing. I mean, it's, you know, that's pretty much what it is, other than the MC to the north. So I think we need to clarify that issue too, and that could be part of the application.
And I'll tell you what, because I might be coming across wrong in this, I don't want to drag you through a terrible process that you don't need to go through. If the PDD is determined to be okay to have whatever you called it, workforce housing, because it's not overtly specific to senior housing, it's possible you don't have to do an amendment to the PDD, the one from 2019 sticks. I don't know if that's the case. I don't know if you've done any research on that. Like I said, go back and listen to the tape. There was some back and forth about whether that PDD from 2019 is overtly specifically senior housing. Just because you came to get it for senior housing, is it still in place where it could allow for this workforce housing? That's number one, and that's a legal thing that Charlie or John DeMarco or Kyle Taylor or whoever will have to give the town side of that. And I know you're representing the client. Second thing is, you make a very good point. If the zoning line goes right through the parcel, and I assume Charlie is looking to sell just that parcel, not the whole thing.
He's looking to sell the whole thing, but that's the only one that's part of this.
Is he
this
selling the whole
application.
thing to this buyer?
No.
So that,
there's any
moving to
buyers
the
out there.
zoning, I mean, you know, because we don't have a crisis thing, let's do it right.
Exactly, that's what we want to do.
And it is odd to have, Josh, is it normal to have a zoning line go through the middle of a parcel?
Well, yeah, this is a big parcel when they bought it. I think it was that way when they bought it.
Yeah, I mean, we do have several examples of that situation throughout town. It's not ideal, but yes, it
I
does
couldn't
exist.
even venture a guess what the process is to move the zoning line over to meet the parcel line. But that's where you and the town attorneys will figure that out, right?
Yeah, so I guess that's what we're doing. The next step is what? I talk to Charlie, we figure
I
out
think-
if we want to do
And if you're representing the client, then you're gonna get with the town attorney's legal representation over the next month or two, and figure out what the best process is. Because like I said, I'm not looking to have you have an elongated process if we look and say, they don't really need to do that. But we wanna do it right.
But either way, we're going to need a clarification, either an interpretation from the board as to whether this is exclusively senior housing, or whether it can be any kind of multi.
Couldn't agree with you more, Ann, and you know what, as you know, because you have been a town attorney before, nobody on this board is an attorney, so how does the board make that determination? We go to our legal counsel and we get that advice. So we need to get that, and Charlie, we're not prepared for that tonight, but I think we can get prepared for that relatively quickly.
All right.
Make sense?
Yeah, so I guess I don't want it to linger again, so I'll call you tomorrow, we'll schedule a meeting or what?
That's fine.
So
And-
I mean, that's what we need to do. We need to keep moving on.
Can I
We
be in
already
on that
lost
meeting?
this application.
May I be in on that meeting?
If you
Now, some people in town, they would say, don't get Flaherty in a meeting, he's a distraction. But I would kind of like to be at that meeting because like I said, we're trying to create a more customer-friendly process for our citizens, but also for developers and engineering firms. And I just want to make sure we're not sending you through a process at the boards that doesn't need to be done. And if you watch that tape, there was enough back and forth about, well, maybe this current PDD covers workforce housing, because
And
it's
how-
not specific.
How about if you contact Mr. Flaherty's administrative assistant, Kim Doyle, give her a call tomorrow and set up a meeting with you and me, the supervisor, and Josh, sorry, I'd like to drag you in too.
I'd be happy to attend.
and anybody you want to
Okay.
bring, and we'll have a meeting. She can set it up in one of the rooms there. She has my schedule, she has the supervisor's schedule, and she has Josh's schedule, so we
All
can
right,
set
she's-
up something.
Is that 872-7068 still?
You
Yes.
got it?
Yep.
Yeah.
All right.
I'll buy the coffee in.
Oh, that's
Let's
fine.
do it.
Okay, all right,
Thank you.
good. Does any board members have any questions?
I
after
know, I
reviewing
feel like I just
everything?
dominated
Anything
that
you want to
thing.
tell me? Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Ann and Sarah. All right. Still 2 minutes ahead of time. The next item up tonight is, wait a minute. Sarah, are you coming right back up there?
Yes.
A double header for the Costage firm tonight. We have a presentation by Costage Engineering, and I guess Jerry Goldman from Woods Oviatt on a potential senior housing development at 799 Holt Road, the former lumberyard site. So Jerry and Sarah,
I think Sarah and I have
Have
talked
at
a
it.
little bit, and I'm at least going to start until someone pokes me and says, you have to stop. My name is Jerry Goldman, for everyone who doesn't know. I'm an attorney for 799 Holt Road LLC, whose principals are here this evening. We have Kimberly Glazer, who's in the front row. We also have Louis Fico and Greg Kimber, who are here, and Sarah Costage is the president of Costage Engineering. You hit that right on the head, Mr. Supervisor, and is the project engineer for this project. As I said when we were walking into the building, I've had a long history with this property. You said a lot of people have come in and talked to you. A lot of people have talked to me about this
I can only
over the
imagine.
course of many, many years. This property was originally used for Webster lumber, and it was zoned industrial. There was ultimately a comprehensive rezoning by the town. It got zoned OP Core North, which does allow senior housing with a PDD and a special permit. A lot of people shied away from the property because of the buildings that Greg and Kimberly and Louis had graciously taken down on this property once they had acquired it. And also there are some wetlands which provide some challenges on the property in terms of design of the property and the overall site. But with the good work from Costage Engineering and the leadership of the ownership team, they're able to put together a concept plan, a site plan for the 65.7 acre property, which does make a lot of sense and also addresses a long-standing comprehensive plan goal of the town itself, in that the way this is designed, the roadway ultimately would connect with Abigail Way, which takes us all the way out to Hard Road. And it's been a long-term objective for the town to see a connection between Hard Road and Holt Road, south of Clem, north of the 104 Expressway. This project, if developed as proposed, would allow us to go ahead and do that. The project itself contemplates senior housing because that is what is allowed with the special permit and the PDD on the site. It's a total of 361 units, which is a density of 5.49 units per acre, which is substantially less than the density which would be allowed in a typical residential district. Typical residential district density is about 8 units per acre. So we're on the low end relative to the amount of it. It's just because of the large site that we have those numbers. We're talking about a mix of townhouse-style units. We have 16 4-unit structures. We have 1 3-unit structure, 4 2-unit structures, and we have 11 26-unit multifamily development structures depicted on the site. We would contemplate that the area east of the creek would be developed first on this site. The Costage team took great care to provide for generous setbacks along the trail on the north and from Holt Road on the east. The process that we have to deal with the PDD is to have us come here to this board and to have a public hearing on whether PDD could be utilized. And that is only the topic of what that public hearing would be. Then we would be moving on to the planning board for essentially a site plan review, and then return back to this board at the end of the process for the special permit for the senior housing. So we're at the first step of a multi-step process. And we can work out all the logistics. If the plan and the concept makes sense, what we would request, kind of similar to what you had discussed on the previous PDD, is that you consider on November 7th, calling for a public hearing on the PDD authorization. We think that it can be held as early as the 21st of November, because the OP Core North, or excuse me, the PDD code doesn't specify the length of time for publication, but it says after proper public notice. So that, to my mind, and in accordance with standard zoning practices, a 5-day notice should be sufficient. So I believe we can get it into the Webster Herald and can get it to the 21st. We can work out all these logistics between Charlie and Josh and us and everything else between now and the 7th. But what we would be asking for, if the concept is acceptable, to have you consider this, to have us go and to hold that public hearing, to take that initial step, which really doesn't bind anything other than to essentially send us to the planning board for the fuller site plan review. I think I'm within my 5 to 7 minutes that you allowed me.
Yes, you
Now,
are.
Jerry, that's not what I said. I said the best practice is if you present in 7 to 8 minutes, you give yourself 7 to 8 minutes for the board to say.
Correct.
You can talk for 15 minutes.
Correct.
and
No,
just say,
I
"Thank you,
want to give
you're
the
done."
board the opportunity to ask the question, so
All right.
I wanted to follow the direction. I want to keep you on schedule. I think Paul is the main event tonight, with your budget, and we certainly aren't going to infringe on that time. So, so I don't know if, Sarah, you had anything you wanted to add at this point?
I don't, but happy to answer any questions anybody has.
Great, and I'm sure our ownership group as well.
Is there a way to get the second slide up so people can see it at home, people can see it in the boardroom? Because this is the
Okay.
361 units, the next slide. And I just want to make sure, the only question I
Yeah,
have is.
let me walk through that.
Yeah, that's it. What's north?
North of here is Cambridge, the
Well, I know that.
Jack
Which way
Trail.
is north?
The top.
I'm sorry, north is the top.
In this case.
North
North is
is
the
the top.
top.
This is the way I like to see all plans,
So is
frankly.
the road that is meandering through the bottom third, that's the extension of Abigail?
Essentially,
Okay,
right.
Proposed.
okay. I did a lot of talking at the last agenda item, so that's all I wanted to know.
If you want me to take a minute and walk through the plan, I can do that too. If anyone needs some assistance, let me just point out some things with regard to it. On the northeast side, we have primarily townhouses. We have one unit at the southern part of the road on the property, which has a multifamily building as well as a clubhouse and pool on the southeast corner of the site. And then as we develop north, we have a mix of the townhouse-type units and the multifamily buildings. As you see, the road on the site that goes from east to west or west to east, it does connect, and the reason why it goes down and dips that far is that's where it would connect with Abigail.
You mentioned the multi-story buildings. Which ones are those? Can you clarify that for me?
Those are the bigger the bigger buildings that you see, anything, there are a series, I should have a laser pointer, but I don't with me, but if you take a look at the buildings pretty much along the Holt Road frontage going back to the crossroad, north of the main road, those are all townhouse-type units.
Yes,
And then there's one building to the south, which is a multi-story, is an apartment building unit.
right, that was the one I was really questioning, because you talked about the others being somewhat buried into the site, but that one appears to be right on Holt Road.
Yeah, and frankly, when you take a look at it, I did the approval for the project across the street. If you take a look across the street on that site, that has got a similar size and
Yes.
similar type building right there.
Right,
Their townhouses are further north, so we actually match up kind of townhouses to townhouses, and we match up apartment building to apartment building.
Okay.
So we have some congruity and consistency with regard to the project design.
I just want to say that when I saw this in my inbox with the agenda item and all the information on it, one of the first things I did was look to see if there was that connectivity with the road, because, as you said, it's a long history. I have somewhat of a long history sitting in this seat.
Yep.
Charlie has been here all that time, too, and that is something that we always were hopeful that we would be able to do. So I looked at it, I called Josh for confirmation on it, and I'm really pleased to see that portion of the project.
It's a wonderful step-by-step over the course of the years. I mean, it started with going from hard road and structuring it so that it could connect if something were to happen on this property. And now, potentially something could happen on this property to complete that connection.
It's great.
John, Jim?
I agree.
Any questions, comments?
No.
Jennifer?
No questions. I think it's a great use for the area. It's commensurate with other buildings in the area, and there's definitely a need. I know when I was on the planning board years ago, there were so many projects being brought forward for senior housing. And one of the things we would say is, Webster, where life is worth retiring. But there really is a need for this.
Oh, yeah.
This housing, and I think this would be a good use for that space.
I gotta say, I was saying earlier that in the 5 years that I've been here, Josh, you've been in on these meetings, we've seen 5 or 6 renditions of proposed development here. But it wasn't from the current ownership group. I think you were looking to sell to people, and they said, well, before we buy it, we wanna see if the town likes our idea. This by far is the best looking idea I've seen. And that's without names, somebody came in, Josh, remember, 950 units. They were proposing 950 units. It's pretty funny. I like how I'm assuming the wetlands, and there's 15 or 20 acres on that 70 acres, and you, I think, probably built around them. And
Yeah.
that's why there's a lot of, I'll call it green space in there. It devils in the details, and we can talk about this later, Charlie, our town attorneys and this and that. Interesting, I've always been taught no less than 10, no more than 20, but then on local laws, no less than 5, no more than 10, to put it in the paper for a public hearing. But if we can do it, like you said, I have no problem queuing up a resolution on November 7th. And if we can do the public hearing on the 21st, Josh, I think the way our code is right now, if the public hearing goes well on the 21st, then the board has to refer it in a resolution that day to the planning board.
That is correct.
It's kind of we're looking to change that eventually, because it just is an added step. But that's our code right now.
Yep.
And then, Jerry and Sarah, do you see, I mean, you gave Jerry what you thought the path was, it would end up back here for the special use. Is there variances? Would the planning board say, you gotta go to the zoning board for that?
I don't,
As it stands right now, we're not contemplating any variances from the code for this.
Yeah?
We're good.
And Sarah, this is the attorney hour. The last one was, let's get the attorneys together and whatever. It's kind of the same thing here. If that 5-day, as he just said, is okay, does the board have any problem with
No.
us
None.
doing a
No.
resolution to set a public hearing
No.
for the 21st?
I'll confer with Mr. Goldman about
Yeah.
this, but we'll.
We'll work through
If I'm
that.
okay with it, then I'll advise.
That would be wonderful. And it's great.
Yeah,
Yeah, and Sarah, I'm gonna say it again, thanks a lot for that conveyance pipe thing, it's really
Good.
coming around nice.
Yep, good. I'm glad.
So, you got a good crew over there.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it.
Is it Thomas that is the Mississippi State Bulldog?
That's Thomas.
Yeah, I can live with that.
People remember him, something about the Mississippi State thing. He's
Yeah,
memorable.
he's got a great accent.
Yeah.
You know?
Yep. Yeah.
Good crew.
Thank you.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
great, thank you.
Wow, Paul.
All right.
As Jerry said, it's the Paul Adams Show tonight. I don't want to say everybody else was the warm-up. Thanks, Greg. Paul, the last item on the workshop tonight is a presentation by our esteemed finance director in the town, Paul Adams. And it says the 2025 preliminary budget, which we approved back on September 5th, but really it's a lead-in to the public hearing tonight
Correct.
and the adoption potentially of the final 2025
Right.
budget. So, baton is yours.
All right. All right, I'd like to start off with kind of a high-level look at the budget, a comparison of 2025 to 2024. I've broken it down by operating funds, the sewer fund, and all the other special districts and other funds. So as you can see, the expenditures and the revenues are up substantially year to year. The expense up about 5.3 million and the revenue about 4.8 million. And we've made up the difference with appropriated fund balance by appropriating an additional 457,000. So I'll get into the reasons why there's such a big jump. On the revenue side, the two largest pieces are obviously property taxes, which is about 717,000, and then there's revenue from other sources, which is up over $4 million year to year. So we'll take a look at the expenses. The expense categories with the largest increases are employee compensation, capital purchases, contractual cost, and debt service. I'll get into the reasons for that. Basically, on the compensation side, you're up about $1 million year to year. And there was a police union contract that was not settled until March of 2024, which was well after the time frame when we finalized the budget. That included a 3% increase for 24 and a 4% increase for 25. Plus, there were some bonuses built in there, which were funded by ARPA money. And then we also have 3 new full-time employees built in the 25 budget. In regard to capital purchases, that includes all the equipment for sewer and highway, building improvements, et cetera. Highway year to year, they're actually, in the budget, they have just over $1 million of equipment. 125,000 of that's going to be paid for with CHIPS money. We budgeted to replace the town hall elevator. That's 125,000. We're looking to replace the Arboretum parking lot. That's 180,000. Police vehicles is about 165, and improvements to the sewer collection system is 303,000. In the contractual cost category, that's up about $1 million year to year. And well, there are several large components of this. That includes our insurance premiums to our carrier. It includes $150,000 for a building facility assessment, $97,500 for GIS services, $150,000 for the master plan, and $397,000 for wastewater treatment chemicals. It also includes $573,000 for sludge hauling, which we're hoping to, well, we know we're going to degrease it once we get the drying machine in place, which is all part of the current wastewater treatment plant project. and there's about $235,000 for vehicle leases. In addition, debt service is up substantially. Obviously, we have quite a few capital projects going on around town. I'll get into the details of those later, but we did borrow about $51 million in August of 2023, and we renewed that 51 and borrowed an extra 16 to get it up to about $67 million in August of 24. So the principal and interest on that does become due in 2025. And the budget also includes a $540,000 transfer to the sewer capital reserve, whereas in the prior year was $50,000. On the capital projects and debt side, so we have the Sandbar Park project, which is really made up of 4 separate projects, which total about $9.5 million. To date, we've spent, the net project cost is about $3.6 million. The Sandbar Park projects were beneficiary of about $5 million in grants. We have the wastewater treatment plant project with an original bond resolution of 81.5. The gross amount borrowed to date is $35 million. The net cost to date is $12.5 million, and we've received, well, we've been earmarked for a $20 million grant from New York State EFC. So far, we've received about $16 million of that grant. There's also the T-Bore Road to Phillips Road conveyance pipe. It's about a $6.1 billion bond resolution. We're expecting it to come in about $6,300,000. The spend to date is about $2 million. And then we have the highway building. The bond resolution on that was $28,250,000. The gross amount borrowed to date is $22,100,000. We've spent about $11,600,000 altogether so far. So when you take a look at this, the net cost represents the gross project expenditures adjusted for revenue, which are the grants that I spoke of. But the bond resolution amount represents the expected gross spend on the project. So, you know, without taking into account the grants and the other sources. So when you take a look at the amount that's bonded is not always what the final net cost of the project ends up being. So you might bond, I've got a total bond of $126 million here. The amount that we actually borrow is going to be considerably less than that, thanks to the grants. On the revenue side, the main increases year to year are property taxes, sewer charges and entrance fees of about $2.4 million, and sewer debt reimbursement, which is actually coming from Fairlife. When you get into the details, so the property tax year to year is up about $717,000, which is about 3.34%. We do budget for Monroe County sales tax. The amount is pretty flat year to year. It's about $6.7 million, but it's a large portion of the other revenue category. Sewer charges and entrance fees are up substantially due to the expectation of Coca-Cola Fairlife coming online in October of 2025. That includes an EDU charge based on how much flow they send to our plant. For every 60,000 gallons they send, they're charged 1 EDU, and currently 1 EDU is about $250. And we're expecting, once they get full up and running, there could be as many as 9,000 EDUs per year. This also includes the entrance fee. Coca-Cola was charged basically a $22 million entrance fee to come online, and that is being paid over a 10-year period. So the 2025 budget includes $2.2 million of that entrance fee. The sewer debt reimbursement, that's up $600,000, and that's due primarily to Fairlife's commitment to pay 96% of the debt service on that conveyance pipe project that I mentioned a few minutes ago. And also interest earnings has been trending up. Rates have been hovering around the 5% level for the past year or so. They've come down a bit lately, but I was able to increase the budget a bit in that category. Let's talk a little bit about appropriated fund balance. Some of you may not understand what that is, but essentially it's a surplus. The town operates with many different funds. They're like separate little companies, and some of these funds have extra money, which is built up over the years. So we are able to take portions of that money and appropriate it and basically treat it as a revenue to balance the budget, which helps minimize the tax burden overall to the taxpayers. So we do have a fund balance policy. It requires that we try to maintain fund balance at a level of 15% to 50% of actual expenditures within the 4 operating funds. And some of those funds are actually outside this range. So we've come up with a multi-year plan to bring them back in line. So we are appropriating a significant amount in '25. Altogether, it's about 3.9 million. The biggest chunks are coming from the general townwide fund, the general part-town fund, and the highway part-town fund. So if you look at those percentages, the two that are currently way down the line are the 2 part-town funds, the general and the highway. General part-town is about 180%, highway part-town is about 198%. So it's not prudent to try to adjust these all in one year. So over several years, we'll try to bring those back in line with the fund balance policy. So the property tax rates, you're currently at 540 for the year. Last year was 506. So year to year, it's up 34 cents, or about 6.7%. But one of the interesting facts, the actual rate, this is for property located outside the village, is less than the rate was in 2022. We were actually 543 4 years ago. In regard to the sewer rent rates, that's another component of it that you'll see on your tax bill. The operation and maintenance rate is going to come in around $209, and the capital charge about $43. The total about $253, which compares to last year, which was $296.83. So year to year, we're actually decreased by about $43.90, or about 14.8%. And a lot of that is due to the additional revenue that we're receiving from Fairlife, not only the entrance fee, but the EDU charges. So historically, what's kind of interesting, the sewer system infrastructure needs have been underfunded. When I keep a history of all the rates. When I looked at the rates from 1998 to 2018, the rate stayed within the range of 162.50 to 167.50. So it was grossly underfunded for years. I mean, money should have been put away into the Sewer Capital Reserve Fund, which certainly would help with plan improvements at this point. So the '25 budget does include a $540,000 contribution to the Sewer Capital Reserve. So for the average taxpayer, an average home outside the village has a assessed value of $177,000. The town's equalization rate is quite low, so that would be approximately fair market value of about $340,000. If that home is connected to the sewer system, they will have a total tax bill of $1,208.73, which compares to last year of $1,192.45. So altogether, you're up $1,628, which is only 1.4%. So overall, things look pretty good. We were able to keep things under the tax cap, currently about $5,000 under the cap. If there's any questions or comments, I'd be glad to
Can you go back 2
try to
slides?
answer.
Can you go back 2 slides?
Sure.
I have a comment.
2 slides?
No, one ahead. No, right there. So I think we've done a great job as far as looking ahead and funding the sewer capital reserve, which, as you pointed out, has been underfunded for years. And we're lowering the rate for the sewer, and that includes $500,000 going into the sewer capital reserve.
That's correct.
I mean, I just want to emphasize that.
Yeah, beat me to the punch, John, but I don't want to be redundant to what John said, but if this board wanted to follow the same, I hate to say it, underfunding of the 1998 to 2018, if we decided to put no money into reserve in the sewers in this year's budget, I think our $252.93 on that slide would probably go down to about $211.
That's probably about right.
And that's great for 2025 for the taxpayers and that own the property, but it's the definition of insanity. We would be doing what we did in the past, and what we did in the past put the town board in 2017 and this town board into a really tough situation where there was no money in savings, there was no money in reserve, and the sewer plant had rotted. When you have no money in reserve and you gotta pay to rebuild it, you gotta go borrow it. And this town board said, you know what? We don't wanna do that to town boards and citizens and homeowners in this town in 2035, 2040, 2045. So that was somewhat, John, I mean, you know, not to, it's basically what you're saying, but I just wanted to
Yeah.
give a little more elaboration. We could have brought this in even less, but it would have been for the good of just 1 year, and it's not good for this community based on what we just saw the last 20 or 30 years, so.
That's all I got, Tom.
Thank you, Paul.
Paul, I want to thank you for a really great presentation. And I hope the community appreciates all the work that you put into it as well and making it understandable. Thank you.
Thanks. I appreciate it.
I will just say is, because we're gonna finish and then we'll take a couple minute break, but when Paul, I gotta tell a little, air dirty laundry, but Paul months ago, maybe last year, said, I just want to give you a heads up, Tom. I've done like a 5-year lookout with what we're building. He goes, 2025 is going to be ugly. We're in trouble. We're going to have the tax rate go up maybe 16% and all that. And I'm like, oh my goodness, you know, this is the reality as well. But he told me that early enough that we did some planning and we caught a very big break. We wouldn't have gone up on the sewer plant from 44 million to 80 million plus if Coke Fairlife didn't hit the picture. And just the way all those negotiated deals and revenues and all of that, when you came in and showed us that the budget for 25 was this, I was incredulous. I said, there's no way it's that good. I was doubting Thomas. And he sat down with me and I'm like, I'll be damned. It is, you know, a really nice job. But a
Yeah,
team effort all around.
Thanks. A year ago, there were many unknowns,
Yes,
and a lot of those unknowns ended up working out in our favor.
they sure did.
Yeah, so
Yeah. Well,
we're good for now.
we are. That, my friends, concludes the workshop portion. Maria, will we take like a 2-minute break?